Hey everybody, it's Saturday morning and we're going to do a little bit of work here on the native tank today. I'm going to get in there, I'm going to do a really big water change. I'm probably going to work on the filter while I'm in there, but I'm also going to add some plants today. I'm really reluctant to do that, but I'm going to give it a whirl just to see what happens. I can always take them out, or as I suspect, between the crayfish and the tilapia, they'll get taken out pretty quickly anyway, so it's not really going to be that big of a deal. And as I always say, you can always get in there and change it again later if you don't like it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that today. I've had a lot of people ask me to put plants in this tank, and I generally say no because I don't particularly want plants in this tank. But today we're going to give it a shot anyway, just to see. I tried planting some, I want to say it was Val when I first got it. One of my viewers sent me some fish from Florida, and they also sent me some plants that they had pulled out of the canal behind their house. This tilapia being one of those fish. These are invasive species down in Florida. So the plants didn't take, and that was okay with me because, as I said, I didn't particularly want plants in this tank. So for those of you who don't follow along with all my videos, or if you're fairly new to my channel, let me make clear that this native tank has never been intended to be a true biotope or any kind of demonstration of any specific habitat or, specimens in our area or anything like that. All this tank has ever been for me is a way for me to enjoy a little bit of my outdoors in here in the basement. Bodies of water are pretty important to me when I'm outside in the warmer weather, the nicer weather. I tend to spend a lot of time either in my kayak or hiking in the woods or fishing in streams. I spend a lot of time around the water. And I just wanted something here in my fish room that would sort of recapitulate my experience outside. So again, it's not meant to be anything specific, just the sort of generalized feel of what my bodies of water around here are like. And if you're familiar with Maryland, you could look at this, and in here you can pick up the Potomac or the Patapsco. You can pick up any little local streams that run behind your house, Gwynn's Falls, Little Falls, Murphy's Run, George's Creek. You can see all those in this tank. And in most of those places, I don't really see a lot in the way of vegetation. When I get out to Pretty Boy Reservoir, in the shallower waters, I'll see some marginal grasses, maybe some lily pads, and there's a few other things. And I've already decided that when the weather is warmer this year and I can get back out there, I'm going to try to harvest a few plants and see if I can't bring them back in here and get them to do, excuse me, to do well in this tank. I don't know if it'll work or not, but we can give it a shot and we'll find out. Today, however, I've just got some spare Java fern, and I've got some temple plant, and I might have a little bit of water sprite that I can float in here, and I think that'll make a big difference too. Not sure about the water sprite just yet. Got to wait and see if I've got any of that, but I do have a bucket in the other room that's got some plants in it that I've been treating for cyanobacteria for the last several days. So let's go over and have a look at the plants as they are now, and we'll see what we're working with. And in the meantime, I'll go ahead and get started on this water change, and we'll see where we go from here. Alright, I've removed them from a bucket, and I just put them in this box so it would make it easier for us to look at. I wasn't actually keeping them in this box. But we've got a big chunk of temple plant right here. You can see all those roots and everything already established on it. This came out of my gudgeon tank. In fact, all these plants came out of my gudgeon tank. I did a water change in there recently and removed some of the plants. So, don't know how long this temple plant will last with that tilapia. Probably not very long at all, but we'll find out. So we've got that, and then I've got two pretty significant chunks of Java. You can see, if I hold in front of the camera properly, you can see enough of a rhizome there that this will probably just be one piece. I'll put that in somewhere down in the bottom. And then on this rhizome here, it's a little bit bigger, a little bit of, I got two different branches of the rhizome, so I can break this one up, and I'll have two chunks that I can put, maybe tie one to a branch, maybe tuck one down under some rocks in the bottom. I don't know. I thought I had a little more than this, but it's something to get started with at least. I did want to say that this stuff was all really black and grungy when I first started. I pulled it out of the tank and I put it into the bucket I was treating it in, just a 5-gallon bucket, and I put an air stone in it, and I put some of this ChemiClean aquarium treatment in it. I've used the Ultralife blue-green slime stain remover in the past, and it does an okay job, but it never really fully cleaned everything out. This stuff is dynamite. It just, you put it in the tank, you follow the instructions, and you get clean tank. I mean, that's just, I can't believe what this looks like now. It was black when I put it in the bucket a couple days ago with an air stone, and now you can look at it. And I did not have it blacked out either. It wasn't in a bucket that was sitting in the darkness. It was in a bucket that was plenty well lit to keep the plants well, you know, lit and healthy. It's just that treatment alone has done that. And in fact, if you look at this root growth here, you can see a lot of really fresh, brand new growth coming off of that. So being in that highly oxygenated environment, you know, in a bucket with an air stone, probably did wonders for the root growth and helped get the roots even more established for me, so when we go back over to the other tank and get them in there, I think we got a better chance of them living. So you can go down below, look for a link to the ChemiClean. In the meantime, I'm going to get on with my water change, and I'll see you back at the tank in a little while. Alright everybody, here we are about 8 hours later. As soon as I finished that last clip, I got a phone call, and one thing led to another, and I never did get back to actually doing the water change. So here it is later Saturday evening, and I'm just now getting around to doing the water change. So I've already skipped through all of the breaking up the plants. I've already got my filter cleaned out and all new packing and everything inside the filter, and we are just about to the bottom of where I'm going to drain the tank, and then we're going to start filling it back up. So I wanted to at least add into this video a look at how much I drain it when I do a fairly significant drain. We'll take a step back here for a moment. You'll get a little better look at the depth of it if I don't back into everything behind me. So that's about how much we're going to pull out of it. That is more than 50%. Remember, all of the rocks and gravel and everything in the bottom displace a lot of water. So if that was an empty aquarium just full of water, then about the halfway mark would indeed be about the halfway volume. But because of all of the stuff in the bottom displacing all that water, the bulk of the water in the tank has already been removed, and we're probably looking at probably a 60 to 70% water change. And of course, I'm just completely guesstimating that number. I have no way of actually measuring that volume or anything. I'm just kind of guesstimating that around 60 or 70% water change. So I told you it's going to be a doozy. I am going to take a sample of this water, and I am going to go ahead and do a sample of the water after it's filled back up, and maybe tomorrow or something we can do another video real briefly looking at the differences, or maybe I'll tack it on to the end of this. Who knows? We'll see. But sit tight. I'll show you what the tank looked like before we got started on all this. We'll do the before and then the after. But first, let's have a look at the before and after on the nitrates. I'm already done with the water change, and there's no need to let the tank settle down in order to get this reading. So the vial on the left here is the before, and the colors never really come out very well on camera, and I've also found that it's really difficult to tell the difference between 40 and 160 when these vials start getting red like this. But to the best of my ability, as near as I can tell, we have just gotten into the 40 parts per million. We've still got a hint of orange in the red there, so we're probably just around 40 parts per million. And then after that massive water change like that, we are still at about 20 parts per million, maybe 25 parts per million. Again, it's hard to be really precise. I don't think these tests necessarily need to be precise, as long as you got a pretty good idea of what's going on. And there you go, that's a pretty good idea of what's going on. So let's get back over to the tank, and I'll show you what the tank looked like before. Alright, and there's your after. So not a whole lot to discuss now that we're finished. We kind of talked about it as we went along. You can see I added the Java Fern. I got the temple plant down there on the left. And then of course with the removal of so much water, we really reduced the tannins in the tank. I'm not 100% sure if I mentioned this yesterday. I know I had thought about it. I was going to suggest that when we did the after video it would be much brighter because I was going to turn the forward light fixture on to really make an impact. And I realized this morning when I turned the lights on, the forward light fixture was already on. So in the previous segment there, where we looked at the before segment of video, that forward fixture was still on. We've got no different in lighting between this and that segment of video. So all of this additional brightness you're seeing now is strictly from removing the tannins in the tank. I did not change the lighting on this from the before to the after in any way at all. That's 100% removal of tannins, brightened the tank up like that. So having a little bit of a closer look, we can come over. Most of the Java fern is just sort of wedged between either two rocks or a piece of wood and another piece of wood, or a piece of wood and a rock. You've got to do that gently when you're pinching the rhizome between two things. It's kind of a fine line between getting it in there securely and getting it in there too tightly. If you put pressure on the rhizome itself, the sort of thick, knobbly green section of root, if you will, if you put too much pressure on that, it will actually kill the segment of fern. It'll die off. What you see is these little sort of brown, hairy looking roots that come off of that main rhizome. You can see a bunch of them here. If you can get those down and tucked in between two rocks or something like that, again, you don't want to pinch them all off and you don't want to do it too securely, but those are what you want to really try to get in there and get secured rather than that main rhizome itself. And hopefully I've done that without pinching it too tightly. The downside to that is if you don't pinch it in there really tightly or really get it good and buried in the gravel or whatever, then you wind up losing them because the fish knock them loose, the crayfish dig them up, and of course all you need is the tilapia grabbing on the tip of one of those fronds and tugging on it, and it just pulls the whole thing loose. So we're probably going to struggle. I already had to tuck a few pieces back in this morning that were free floating in the tank, so we're probably going to have to do that from time to time until it either gets munched up and is gone, or I get it in there securely enough that it attaches and roots and starts growing. I'd love to see it attached to some of this wood and get established and stay in here, even if it stays, you know, sort of cropped and chopped and, you know, chewed up all the time. As long as it's in there and living and growing and rooted in, I'll be happy. That'll be fine with me. So we'll see how the rest of the day pans out. Find out what that tilapia is going to do once it starts getting a little more used to the fact that there's some plants in the tank. So I'm going to call that good. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. That way you won't miss anything else I got coming up. And of course, don't forget, this one is my 125-gallon native tank. So thanks again. I'll see you real soon in the next one.